Great to be here. My name is Anthony. I work on Maple AI. Previously, I've done a lot in the Bitcoin privacy space before, a lot of like layer two onion routing stuff. I've done a lot of research and built a lot of wallets, trying to incorporate privacy where I can. And some of the things over the years that I've learned working in the space is just kind of like balancing user experience with privacy preserving technologies and try to encourage best practices while not scaring away the user at the first step. So yeah, about 2 years ago, we kind of shut down our privacy focused wallet that we were working on. It was called Mutiny, and then started working on private AI. What brings me in here? So I wanted to kind of like take a step back and kind of just like set the ground floor. So we utilize Maple's an application where we allow users to utilize TE based LLMs. Um, Tinfoil being our primary providers, which is great. They've been awesome. And so a lot of people here, I guess, know a lot about TEs at this point. I would say like the nation state level attack is like out of scope, I believe, from something like TEs, like especially when hardware based attacks exist. Nations, where are the servers running, who gets access to it. I think like kind of setting that standard of like, okay, we like TE based LLMs are great, but they're not perfect. And then also the kind of thing I want to kind of stress here is like, we want to provide people an alternative to ChatGPT and Anthropic and some of these closed providers that are just like using and selling their data. And in order for them to do that, we have to try to balance between UX and some of the like, for instance, like verifying the TE attestations. Like a normal user has no idea what's going on with that. And so like trying to balance between like, okay, this is a very scary TE cryptography thing versus like, okay, like my parents both use Maple, and in fact, like it's the only AI that they actually use at this day. My dad called me the other day saying like he wants more and more credits because he's just blowing through, which is great for me to hear. I love to hear that. So like just setting from the ground floor, we have a lot of normal, what I would say normal people. I think yeah, my parents using one of my apps the first time is great, and we try to kind of balance. I think from like it's kind of self-selecting, but from a lot of support requests we get and from a lot of the users that email us or tell us about things, like it's a lot of people that have no idea what's going on, to put it frankly, with AI, with some of their photography and TE stuff under the hood. So we try to do our best to make it easy and transparent, and also like kind of balance that.
Correct. But there's lots of stories like open router s companies. I don't know if they do it like selling traces. You mentioned selling data. Do you know? Do you have a sense of how much money you're not making by not selling data?
Well, Open Router is now valued at 10 billion potential acquisition by Stripe. Something like, not 10 billion. That's too high. Is it? It's even higher.
No, it's 10 billion.
It's 10 billion. Okay.
10 billion, yeah.
Yeah.
Higher than 40 will annualized revenue.
Yeah, and I mean I won't say I won't say for sure like what they actually collect, but they have put out a lot of analytics about their usages of Open Router, and so it's like, okay, how did you analyze this data? You're selling ZDR based solutions to people. You advertise ZDR, but at the same time, where are you getting this data? So I mean, it's like, okay, are they just like classifying it and discarding it? Who knows? But yeah, they're worth a lot. I mean, yeah, they have a very sophisticated router system. Credit to them. But who knows? I mean, Cursor, being able to like collect the data and be able to like run, be able to train a new model off of like the data that they collected from the users and the IDE that they do. So yeah, I think there's a lot of money in selling data. I mean, that's kind of like the last thing that these frontier labs need, and like other people trying to train models, they kind of need the data in order to do that. So I think it is. I think it's a lot. Yeah. And then I think when like I think we kind of live in a bubble a little bit here, especially being in AI. But I think when you ask like a normal person in America, like I do think that they at least say that they care about privacy when it comes to AI. I think reveal preferences mean a lot. So who knows if they're willing to go the extra step, or how to like educate them about it. But I do think they're like, out of all the stats that I've seen a lot of stat publicists published, and it's like, okay, why aren't you using AI if you're not using AI? And like data privacy concerns are like 40 to 50% of the top concerns in some of the stats that I see. And so I think a lot of people here know about TE based inference right now, and I won't like get too much into that. To talk to Tinfoil, they're talking next. So like let's kind of like have the ground floor. Like TE inference is a great privacy solution for users. What about everything else? So we have like a TE based app layer where we do proxying, and we do like some app logic ourselves. But what about everything else? Where like from the user interacting with the model, or sorry, with their own clients, who like, where do tools and commands run? Then where does it go? Where do the traces go? Where does the memory go? How do they actually communicate with the TE at the end of the day, or their agents? The agents and the inference is like being separated. The runtime right now is being like separated from where the harness runs. Like there's all of these new layers being formed and bifurcated, and like the simple chatbot that where you just log into ChatGPT like it's 3.5 and you had a quick conversation with it and throw it away. That world is gone, and now it's like, okay, how do we bring more privacy solutions to the edges? Assuming TE based inference, or local models are always the best. I mean, if you air gap your machine, you have a local model. That is always going to be the needs to be solved around the edges. And so yeah, TE based inference, I won't get into that much, but I do think think with Sasha that has like a great quote of like, inference is like a very great use case for TEs, because it's just like you process the request in time, and then you kind of throw it out. Remember, I mean, you have KV cache too, but like you shut down the machine and it's all gone, right? And so like it's a really great use case for TEs. And so I've basically, the next handful of things I'm going to go through is just kind of like, what else do I think about when it comes to where else can we protect user privacy in the modern agent harness stack? And as we start, at Maple, we're starting to build more agentic products that live in our desktop application and do things on behalf of the user on the user's computer. And so like, this is what I'm thinking about next. It's not just like for us to separate ourselves from the other harnesses out there, but like, how can we now be good stewards of the user's computer? Because right now, like Maple just does, it sends the inference request and it comes back, right? But like, as we start getting more into agentic things, we need to really be conscious about all the access that it might have. So, for instance, I believe it's one of the things I really like, and we've done some of this before. It's like, okay, what can we run on the edge? What can we do for edge compute? And so, Whisper models are starting to get really good and be able to run on even an iPhone. We do PDF and document parsing on device as well. So like, there's been a lot of good Rust libraries that we use for doing that, for like OCR based things, and even taking advantage of some of the GPU on the hardware side on the user's local machines to do that. So one of the things that we haven't gotten into yet, but I think is really cool, I think it's actually the Stanford Hazy research team that's been a big adopter of this, is like what they kind of call like the minions method. So you have like a local model do the processing of the more sensitive user request, but then it does the PII stripping and sends it to the frontier model. And then at that point, you can send it to, you could, send it to OpenAI if you wanted to with your PII stripped, and then have the local model process it after and kind of like put the PII back in when responding to the user. Or you can use Tinfoil as the outer edge as well, another TE model. That way you can even keep the more sensitive stuff local to just the local model. Open Anonymity also is doing a lot in this space as well. I think code execution is starting to become kind of the scary thing. There's a joke the other day with all this Hugging Face stuff with OpenAI, where it sounds like OpenAI researchers are just feeding feeding sandboxes to codecs and their GPT models, and they're just eating them up. And it's like, wow, it just sounds like you're feeding sandboxes to them, and they started crying, when they presented with that. But like it, like these sandboxes that may run on your local computer, whether it's Docker, whether it's like a VM, things like that. It's like, how secure is that even? If you give a very powerful model enough time, like, can it break into that? And so what I really want to see at some point is like, even like the other concern is like, okay, you could use sandboxes today. There's a lot of harnesses that plug into sandboxes on like Daytona, or I think Vercel has a sandbox now. Cloudflare has a sandbox, but it's like, okay, that's almost worse. I'm now not just sending the LLM my data if I'm not using it TE. I'm sending it to OpenAI or something. But now I'm like giving my whole file system, or at least the entire repository in our project, the entire code base, and that lives on a remote machine. So now there's concerns about that. I want to see like more TE based sandbox solutions out there, not just you can do stuff like simple code execution, where it's just like you have like a REPL environment and you give it just some basic tools. But then like, okay, can you take it a step further and like actually have like entire workflows set up in there? Like you actually like initialize it with all the tools that you want it to have, and you pass your workspace to it, and you have to kind of like have a an in-memory ephemeral, not so much ephemeral, but like more persisted TEE sandbox in a way. And there's definitely some TEE sandboxes out there. I don't know if I've looked at all of them too deeply, because I'm not ready to get into that yet, because that opens up a whole can of worms, and some of them I like better than others when it comes to TE sandboxes. So it's all about like, okay, like who's running the TE, what does the TE developer have access to deploy, where does the state live? All those things need to be taken into consideration for sandboxes, but then also TE sandboxes as well.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why yeah, I'm curious to understand why you're why you think that T sandboxes would be more secure than a regular sandbox? Because I would think it's just even more surface area for the agent to exploit. Yeah, I would think like a solution with like even less code, or like something with like ASIC is like the max security.
My assumption here, and again, I could be proven wrong, but if we're to go as far as to say like, the hardware security models that are being deployed out there, Intel, AMD, AWS Nitro, Apple Private Cloud Computing, if we were to say that like those sandboxes are actually more secure than a standard virtual machine that lives on a machine, yeah, I think I would be really interesting to see if an agent can break out of a hardware-based security module, and maybe it's possible, but then also at the same time, if that's possible, then someone that should probably report that vulnerability. But so yeah, I don't know that for a fact. I think it's an underexplored space that I want to kind of see, more coming to. I think maybe even Tinfoil has probably experimented or has something for this as well. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think like one thing that could make it interesting is like you can just this is something like Jewel has been working on recently. Is like you just like shrink the TCP so much, and then you just kind of like almost like air gap it, such that like ultimately like if you are able to like break out of that, like you're basically breaking out of the TD, and at that point it's like what the TE is almost like like some of the 100 assumptions don't involve. So really, I think that there's like a lot that you can do there. Yeah, but you can run your Docker Decatur inside a TE, and it just like nuke like the entire like user space from like bare. So like even if like you break out of the container, or like whatever the internal sandbox is, like you can't actually do anything. Like yeah, it's kind of the scary situation. Oh, that's maybe one. Sweet, but like we're still working out like all the details, so that's that we haven't released anything yet.
But you can do all that air gapping without the T. Like the T just gives you the attestation, right?
Yep. You I think that there's like another company called Idera, and they do like micro VMs. They they're looking a lot into like also like syncing like the TCP of like certain pieces. I don't know the details of that, so I'm not gonna comment, but yeah, like I think that there's like non-T approaching the thing. Like, um, one of the things that we're trying to do is like reduce the trust assumption down to like what it would take to break out of the T in order to break up out of the, quote unquote sandbox. Yeah, but most people like T sandboxes is not like preferable because like you want to have like extremely fast like startup time, so like that's where you want like something like Firecracker or like other sorts of like micro VMs. But for a lot of like these like agent situations where like you're just like running code for like a long time, like maybe that like 1 second startup time or like doesn't matter as much. So that's kind of like another reason why people haven't like probed too much into T's.
Another one is memories and sessions. Like yeah, there's the chat history itself when you're in individual chats, but then more and more and more, like we still don't even have memory features ourselves. Like I don't know when we will have that per se, but I think it's like it calls into question like, okay, where does the chat sessions live? Where do the memories live? What one direction we're starting to go is like just move everything to the end, the client side, and just like keep everything there. Use that as a one of the things I talk about it later, but like use P2P or hole punch through technologies to like have your phone be able to talk to the agent running on a different machine, and then that's how you can like access memories and all, and like and encrypted to your auto device. So I think memory based solutions are really interesting. Like definitely you would want to like encrypt them client side, and then maybe then it's like, okay, how do you sync them? How do you run into conflicts with them if they exist? I think there's like a lot of, I mean, anytime you deal with TE, state is going to be the bane of your existence, and so there's always improvements you can make there. Um, and so that's kind of another thing. It's like where does that live? Um, I looked at a lot, like one of the first versions of Maple actually had like a blind authentication token scheme, a lot like Open Anonymity talked about. So he kind of answered most of the questions there, so I won't get into them. But another thing, and it ties back to the web search problem as well. It's like, um, the LLM, the agent needs to be able to have useful things like web search and things like that. So it's like, where does that run? And Kagi has like implemented their version of like Privacy Pass too, which I think is really cool. We recently have started integrating them inside of our like it initiates from inside of our TE based, like the user requests a web search to our TE, and then our TE will initiate the request over to Peggy. We don't yet use their blind authentication scheme. They haven't like, they still need to like officially announce their launch, but that's one of the things I thought about maybe asking them to. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, well, um, how does billing work? How does insights work? Like when we had our own blind authentication scheme, especially like it was 2 years ago, and we were still in like an alpha state, and it was just like way too buggy, way too hard. Like I think Apple's approach for it is really smart. They have actually rolled that out in their private cloud compute for their AI services, and they go like the full step. They have a blind authentication scheme, and then they have an implemented HTTP server as well. Um, and one of the cool things is like they'll even do like the refund path too, because like when it comes to inference, like you don't know how much it's going to cost until the end request happens, until you get the output from the LLM. So then they have even implemented. I haven't like looked exactly at the technical details there, but you can actually kind of implement it almost kind of like eCash style, where then you have kind of like your refund tokens, so to speak, and then you can like be able to redeem if you overspent for the request. So you pay the maximum amount and then you get refunded. I think that's like another interesting exploration about how to kind of like at the end of the day, we Apple's Apple has said this with their implementation, but like just having TDs is not good enough. They want to go the full step into like they don't want to be able to like reroute users if they think like a specific user is a specific person. So like they want to protect. They don't want to see the IP address. They don't want to know what user ID it is. They don't want to see anything. They just want to say, hey, here's an inference request, handle it because here's my blind authentication tokens. I think that's like another cool space that I would like. I'm glad Open Anonymity is working on it. I think utilizing that more and more in services would be really cool. Timing attacks are always interesting. I think that was kind of brought up for like web-based stuff. Like if even if, and this is kind of like, okay, maybe we do roll out, maybe we do have an integration with KV where we're using blind authentication tokens. Well, it's like very obvious now that like an LLM would like queue up like 10 tools at the same time, and they might have like 10 different search requests, and each one of them come in bulk. And so it's like, oh, okay, we can just like very easily correlate all of them. So with that one specific user. So, you know, I think that example is already kind of brought up, and I think it's a very good case. But then it's like, you know, what else is the agent doing, and what other timing attacks exist and data attacks? I think communication to the agent, this is going to be more important as time goes on. I mean, you know, I'm sure everyone here has like experimented or like looked at like the whole OpenClaw movement and Hermes movement and all of that. And you know, in my like some of the disappointing part for me to see is like everyone just like hooking it up to Telegram and Discord, right? They have their agent. Maybe it's like running on their own computer, it's processing their own documents, you know, things like that. You know, they're self-hosting it, right? But then they're going over Telegram, or then they're going over Discord, and now it's like who at Telegram and who at, I mean, you know, Telegram end-to-end encryption, like most people don't use that, and I don't think they would use that for some of the agent-based APIs anyways. So it's like not only do they see that data as another communication provider, a lot of people for iMessage, like they roll on iMessage, like it's great that iMessage has end-to-end encryption, but what are most people using? They're using like a third-party service for that iMessage integration. So then it's just going through a third party. I think like Bubbles is one of the most popular one, iBubbles or something like that. And so it's like, okay, like who in the communication chain? Because the user, you know, they might be running on their own machine, processing their own documents and self-hosting it, but then they're using Telegram, they're using Discord. They see that data, and they have the ability to send your agent messages too. And I think that is a concern that not a lot of people are worried about right now. That probably should be. I mean, luckily though, like you can use Signal with some of your agents. I've experimented with it. I mean, I don't know other people's experiments with it, but like the Signal CLI and some of the third-party Signal tools haven't been the best reliability from my perspective. People have done Element and things like that as well. So there are ways to do end-to-end encryption to solve that problem, but like the problem is most people aren't utilizing that because it can be very difficult to set up in a proper way. Yeah, I kind of already talked about OHTTP and blind auth tokens. It would also be really useful. Like we don't have it rolled out yet, or you know we did, but like rolled that back. But being able to reintroduce that at some point, I think would be really good. Kind of just like, you know, deal with the refund auth tokens and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I mean, I think in general, I mean, I just kind of like rambled on about some of the things I think about old edges. But I think like a lot of the pieces are there, and I think that's what I want to kind of leave people with is like Apple Private Cloud Compute. They have thought about this intensely, and they have put a lot of their own pieces together for it. I think like when it comes to like private key management, especially when you want to like have your agent or have your like be able to communicate with your agent on any of your devices or be able to sync chats, you know, then it starts to become like PKM problems all over again. I mean, every problem is a PKM problem. There's other things that like I haven't really looked into much, like encrypted spaces. I think it's really interesting, especially like if you can start protecting the data that these agents are using. Buzz recently blew up, I think last week or this week. It's kind of like a Nostr-based communication protocol, which I think there's a lot of problems with Nostr. But I think it's really interesting to kind of have like it's opening up the floodgates a little bit as we start to have companies and even like friends and groups of friends start to have collaborative agent experiences, and I think that opens up a whole can of worms. And so like I would like, you know, I would like to see some like anonymous communication protocols or like other things like maybe element channels or things like that to kind of have like collaborative experiences with agents. Ideally in a privacy preserving way. But a lot of the pieces are there, and yeah, there's like T Inference is just like one part of the problem. I think there are their identity search, messaging, code execution, collaboration. Sorry, some of this is hard to read. Transactions. I know people here working transaction space, but then yeah, storage and stuff. So I think there's a lot of really interesting problems to solve, and I think it's really just a matter of like putting in the right combination of tools. Otherwise, like someone that just rolls out Hermes or OpenClaw, or they run an agentic harness like OpenCode or things like that. Like you have to like bring your own pieces to it if you want to set those up in a privacy preserving way. And for whatever reason, like even setting up like a custom like I've had so many support requests of people just like not knowing how to like set up a custom provider in their their open code and stuff like that. So then they just kind of like they don't know what to do further to even configure a different inference provider. So I think one of the things I want to focus on over like the next year or so is just kind of like try to build our own harness that like starts to pull in more pieces of like the privacy stack and security stack, and try to like push forward like best practices for people. But yeah, I mean that's it.
So let me ask you, what properties of fees are you really utilizing?
Or
What are the properties or reasons why you have a fee? Either the privacy or confidentiality or trusted execution?
I think privacy.
First of all, privacy.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially when it comes to the user's prompts and the user's data. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff with verification that could happen. I think Tinfoil has done a lot of work on the verification. How do you know you're talking to the model that you are supposed to be talking to? So you can potentially even like verify that the weights are not just that you're talking to a TEE, but that you're talking to a very specific model inside of a TEE. To kind of like help with that.
And do you assume the DE that has embedded some trusted execution like HGX, or only some kind of trusted storage like I don't know, like Antrazone doesn't have a full functionality like Intel HGX, as far as I know. So you can securely store something, but you can ensure that these secrets that are stored there are used in a secret way in useless space. So that's why I'm asking whether you also consider this, because not every PE or trusted hardware has the same functionality.
Yeah. No, I mean we had in our first versions of it, we had definitely rolled out like more TE encrypted state management solutions for some of our users for user experience reasons. And then like I think rolling that back and kind of moving things more to the end client, not relying on any like TE encrypted state is kind of like where we're heading more. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but I think there's a lot of interesting things you can like maybe do inside of TE as far as like app logic goes. Like we have like a load balancer proxy thing, so we work with another TE provider in case Tinfoil is getting overloaded a little bit. We have like fallbacks and like some other application logic that we do inside of our TE. So we have that in our TE, and one of the things that I think is actually interesting is to see more TE based services spin up, and then we kind of do like TE chaining at a certain point. So like the user trusts our app model, and then it's like routing to other TEs that they don't have to like our TE is validating the other TEs. That's kind of how we work today with the TE inference.
Okay, so what the hardwares are you considering or are compatible with your solutions?
Right now we have AWS Nitro as our app layer, and then like we interface with Tinfoil and Edgeless, and they have I think they use both Intel and
HGX, yeah.
Yeah.
All of them?
No, I think they use AMD too.
Which AMD? SEV? Because this is not a fast execution, SEV. It's just encrypted access to memory. Or some kind of techniques, not like a fully fledged TE. So this is something you should consider or think about when you are searching for alternatives of fully fledged TEs. So in terms of functionality, there isn't only SGX, but the problem of SGX are so many bugs, and they refuse to fix it because they feel with the business model is deploy the cloud. So whenever you have a physical access, we can do the funny things. And
Oh
but
yeah,
make sure that
that's well,
yeah.
the funny thing stuff. I mean, that's kind of what I started out the conversation with. Is like that's
Yeah.
not the threat model, and I think most
That's
TE providers out
Yeah.
there will say like that. Unfortunately, like even the confidential computing hardware providers will say that that's out of scope. Oh,
Yeah, and I ask especially for web properties that we're considering PPE because sometimes it doesn't hurt when it's broken. Because we lose
yeah.
virus.
I think the
don't
talk
want to-
the talk we've heard earlier about using it for DDoS protection, I think is really interesting. That using it for DDoS and not the privacy part of it was really interesting. But unfortunately, with LLMs, like there's no
Okay.
fully trustless way to do it at all.
Okay, thank you.
Great presentation, thank you. Seems like there's a lot of projects trying to do private inference, right? I just wrote a story. This is my Brad Taft from PE AI Brews. I wrote a story about this release that Akash had yesterday. He came up, they announced confidential compute, and they're using these. But it seems like Morpheus says that they do that, and there's a bunch of other these kind of depend projects that comes private, or maybe they say they do or they don't. And I'm curious, can you walk us through that landscape? Like I mean, I don't know if people want to Billy Kiss or whatever, but I'd love to hear kind of your view of the landscape brief.
Yeah. I think there's relatively few players. I think there's like a lot more players that like I haven't even heard of the ones you brought up. So like I think Fala, I think Near, I think Edgeless, Tinfoil, of course. Man, so like there's not too many at like the base layer, like providing the actual like inference service, in my opinion. But then I think what you kind of see more is like everyone utilizing them for their own applications, and that's kind of like where we're fitting in right now. My like where I see Maple in the grand scheme of things is like trying to like push forward the end user application experience and our client side experience, and utilizing the other TEEs that do great work at what they do. So yeah, like Fala, Near, Tinfoil, Agilus. I think there's probably a handful of others that kind of do it, but it's kind of a small space.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see the future for hosted agents? Like considering the part that I guess like users are yet again going to want to rely on someone to run agents also. Because like honestly I tried to set up Iron Claws, it's so difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I won't. I know there are like I said, I think there are some TE agent providers out there. I think Ironclaw, I think Near also provides that as a service too, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
I haven't looked so deeply at it to like analyze it from a technical perspective. To whether or not it's solving some of the harder problems when it comes to state management and like encryption, and like how does the user ensure that like only they have access to it in the way that it's being advertised. So I think there's still a lot of hard problems when it comes to like trying to fully host an agent inside of a TEE. And so yeah, I haven't dug down that rabbit hole just because I know how hard it is. Like I said, we haven't even really seen just like, I mean, there's sandboxes, but like I haven't really seen like ones that I really wanted to use just in a generic sandbox, let alone like host the whole agent inside of it. And I think also like the usefulness of an agent inside of a TE. I mean, these things can be like pretty hardened too inside of an enclave. So then it's like, okay, what can that agent do? Like users often want the agent to be able to do literally everything with like no denial, like auto approve all of the requests, right? But then it's like, okay, like where, then they're like, even if they're running it remotely, they get prompt injected in the agent sends their data somewhere else that they weren't supposed to, or or like because it's hosted in a secure enclave, it's like not able to actually like execute the commands that it might want to execute, or some people want to like serve websites on their box and things like that. Some of that gets really hard to do inside of a TE. So I would say that's another thing. It's like the usefulness of an agent inside of TE. If you're locking it down, if you're locking the TE down a lot, then its usefulness goes down. If you're like opening the TE up to be able to like have more network requests out and things like that, then you're opening up risk for infiltration or exfiltration of your data. So it's a hard balance to strike, and I think Near is probably one of the main ones that have gone that far to host agent side TEs, and I can't comment on that mutation.
Right. And also an immediate problem I see with hosted agents, and because we're all talking about network anonymity, is how they're considering that all of these messages of progs originate from Telegram, Discord, and so on. How would you eliminate network metadata over here in the first place? Like that seems a problem that would need to be solved for while many hosts. And also another question that I had was
First for the first question, so I don't forget.
Yeah, before you even respond to that, guys, we're all gonna work together. There is pizza. Please grab some, and then we all just come back with a pizza, and then we don't have to bake you out.
And also, if you want
But continue with the question.
you want to go for special request.
Yeah, and to maybe make sure I got it right, the metadata with going over something like Telegram and Discord, like how would
Yeah, how do you think that would go about? Like, would Telegram have to implement on their side some mechanisms to ensure that the network metadata is eliminated? Or
I mean, if they rolled out proper end-to-end encryption and like they the last time I looked into this using like Hermes or OpenClaw with Telegram, they did not make it easy to turn on like the end-to-end encryption part when you're talking to the agent. I could be wrong on that. So like I would say like using Signal or Elements or some other encrypted communication protocol. I have a bunch of friends that have looked into like building their own MLS based communication protocol and apps to like talk to their agents, and it's hard. It's a hard problem to do that properly.
What's that MLS? Besides the Major League Soccer.
It's the crypto that powers Signal, I believe. It's the same cryptography, if I've got that correctly. Similar.
each layer protocol. So like Signal uses Loy. So now but like Cisco started out using MLS. They kind of like created it, and like now there's like a number of other people that want to use it. So it's like kind of like IETF standard. They did make it look.
Stetsuri or F?
Is it most of your focus on the Inference side, or what? Like when you say running an agent inside are you focusing mostly on the inference or also on the hardness itself?
The harness is what I'm focusing on mostly, and then routing to the TE inference providers. So we're, I mean, so much of this we're not implementing yet, but I mean, it's a lot of hard problems to solve.
Yeah.
And then like piecing those together in the end user application is kind of like what I want to get at, and kind of be our main value for the users.
I recently come across an approach in Senpa and other projects where they're creating different pods for saving credentials and another egress. So the agent that never sees the keys.
Right.
And what the communication is happening with the external world is being recorded in the system.
Yeah, I think that's also like there could be scenarios where like maybe sandboxing solutions where like all the private data lives outside of the sandbox, or for your agent can't see it. I think those are good approaches to like use in combination. It's I don't know any like good harness off the bat that rolls that out, but I could be wrong. I think like because like the point is like a normal user is probably not going to set that up. They're going to send their secrets over to their agents and say, hey, here's my private key. Make some Bitcoin transactions for me. So I think making that easy is the unsolved problem so far. But it's possible. But like I don't know any harnesses that have like gone that far.
I don't see this being at the harness layer. It's a layer above it, because harness
like you want to ideally switch whatever harness you want to use, like Codex, Cloud, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then that's basically agent's harness runtime, but you're trying to capture whatever the agent is actually sending communications externally and managing all the access outside of those requests. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. The plug these things aren't very plug and play. Like, I mean, they are plug and playable, but like if you want to go as far as like try to tackle 3 or 4 or 5 different privacy solutions into your harness, it's like you have to just go and implement harness to harness and harness to harness, and then like then it just like becomes a nightmare in my opinion. Or like I said, like maybe you do something like, you know, a TE based sandbox where you host your agent, and then all of your harnesses could potentially live there if you wanted to set up the sandbox properly. But yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't think there's any good solutions out there yet. But like it is, I mean, you are right. Like these are kind of harness agnostic, but no one's like really combined all the tech together to like make that easy.